Welcome to the Across Borders podcast. In today's episode, we will have Cahit from Marmara University, where he works as a professor in literature studies. Today, this episode is going to be about Turkish society, and we will try to understand it using the literature and Cahit experience in this field. Thank you, Cahit, for coming today to this podcast episode.
It's a pleasure for me.
Super. We will start slowly by kindly ask you to present yourself, to introduce a bit to our audience. We will be interested in knowing a bit about your background, where you're coming from, what's your education, and so on.
Yep. Hello, I am Cahit Bakır. I'm coming from Turkey. I was born in a city called Van in the east of Turkey, close to Armenia and Iran. And in my hometown, we have the biggest lake in Turkey. It's Van Lake. And I was born there. I studied there till university. For university education, I went to Ankara, the capital of Turkey, to study English literature there. And then I moved to Istanbul. And I did my master's degree in Istanbul, and I did my PhD in Ankara again. During my PhD, I went to Canada as a visiting student for 1 year at York University. I took PhD courses there. And then I came back to Turkey, completed my PhD, and now I'm working at Marmara University, a university in Istanbul, as an assistant professor in the Department of English Language and Literature.
Super, very interesting, and congrats for all this very interesting educational trajectory.
Thank you.
So you lived in quite a few cities. You mentioned Ankara and Istanbul.
Van and Istanbul, yeah.
I guess Van it's a bit smaller than the others. How is it? How are those big cities? I know I visited some also Ankara and Istanbul.
Yeah.
They are, at least in the Romanian society, they have very good names. I mean, people would like to go there. There is a lot of tourism. How is it actually to live there as a youngster, I guess?
Yeah, I think like all three cities are distinct in that like Van is a majority Kurdish city. Like a large percentage of the population is Kurdish, and the culture is a little different there. People speak in two languages in their daily lives. It's Turkish and Kurdish.
So it's a bilingual or environment, right?
Yep.
Most of the families do speak both of them.
Yeah. The children are bilingual. I myself am a bilingual person. I learned Turkish and Kurdish at the same time when I was a child. And then I went to Ankara, the capital of Turkey. It's a big city, the second biggest city in Turkey.
Is it like the 2-3 million?
It's like 6 million.
6 million.
Yeah, 6 million.
Super huge for European standards, right?
Yeah. And it has a character, the city. In Turkey, people are divided into two. Do you love Ankara or do you love Istanbul? Are you an Ankara person or Istanbul person?
Which one are you?
I spent most of my time like for education in Ankara. I got my bachelor degree there and PhD degree there. I got my master degree in Istanbul and I'm working in Istanbul. I'm a person of Istanbul, obviously. I like Istanbul. Istanbul is different in that it's multicultural. In Ankara, it's not very common to hear like foreign languages. People usually speak Turkish. On the streets, you might hear Turkish like 90% of the time you spend there. But in Istanbul, there are different neighborhoods, like millions of tourists, immigrants, like millions of immigrants living in Istanbul, people from different ethnicities, different backgrounds. It's like a little chaotic. But I love this chaotic side of Istanbul, I can say.
Yeah, I guess this is what attracts a lot of tourists as well. This is one of the things we realize when we visit the place. So I have a question which is a mirror of this educational trajectory. Who studies English literature nowadays and why? I mean, we have this change in AI, artificial intelligence, and we have things which can translate automatically for us, right? So why? Who is doing this? Why?
Yeah, I think like we have AI, we have robots, we are living in a different world, but we are also humans. So we can we can get information from computers, from AI, but we cannot have critical insights, critical thinking through AI. We need
on the opposite, actually, right?
Mhm.
We see that it misses, it lacks any critical thinking. All kind of stereotypes are reproduced there.
Yeah, because it doesn't. I think it doesn't touch people in literature. You have to touch people. You tell something about society, about people, and that feels real. That's real. To me, the great writers, authors, or at least the ones I like, are those that have something to say. It's like in your life as a person, you are a regular guy and you go to work, wake up in the morning, but there's something in you and you have to tell it. You have to tell it to the world. You have to speak out. And literature gives you this chance to speak out what you have inside. You speak it out to the world, to the next generations. You might have something in you about your personality, about your individualism, about your family, about your ethnicity, about your culture, about your country, or about the world. It doesn't matter. And you share it with others, and that makes you a good writer. And that's something, that authenticity, that AI or computers can't give us.
Yet. Let's hope it stays like this, but we don't know. You mentioned these great writers. I guess I know this from other discussions that scholars like you in the literature are knowledgeable of some writers, and they don't know everybody, or they don't research any single writer, or usually they also can go also for a period of the literature. So how is it for you? Do you have any specific writers or specific period of time from the English literature that you're focusing on or used to work on?
I am currently focusing on postcolonial and postmodern English literature. Like Julian Barnes, Angela Carter. I like those British writers, and writers like Salman Rushdie, Sam Selvin, postcolonial writers. I like them. Also, in Turkish literature, I like Orhan Pamuk, Yaşar Kemal, Bilge Karasu. We have. He's also a very good Turkish author. But Orhan Pamuk and Elif Shafak are well known outside Turkey, especially in Europe, in the Western world. But Yaşar Kemal is more liked in Turkey, I can say. So there's this discussion, like, who is bigger? Is it Tolstoy or Dostoevsky? Right? And in Turkey, is it Orhan Pamuk or Yaşar Kemal? And people are divided into two.
For this reason, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like this word, the postcolonial term. We also use it a lot in sociology. I'm curious if we have a similar understanding of it. When you say postcolonial, do you mean the world after the British Empire?
Yes, after British colonialism, after those British colonies gained independence, and people coming from those societies, they start writing about their experiences, current experiences and historical experiences that their grandparents experienced during British colonialism. And it provides us the perspective to view British colonialism from the other side, not from the majority perspective, but from the other side, the colonized side. And that's something real, that's something authentic. That's like what we have this like organic intellectual. In Turkish literature, we have the same. Like to me, Yaşar Kemal is an organic intellectual. He comes from poorer background, and he did many jobs. He worked in many areas, in manual jobs, in agriculture, and he became a journalist and then a writer. And when I read his books, I can feel he's real, he's authentic. The characters he creates are authentic, and that's one criticism to Orhan Pamuk in Turkey. He was born in Nişantaşı, a fancy neighborhood in Istanbul, and he comes from a wealthy family. At high school, I guess he went to America for 1 year to study at high school. At 1 year to study high school there, he had opportunities. He comes from a wealthy family, and he also writes about Anatolian people. He writes about poor people coming from poor backgrounds, just like Yaşar Kemal, but
from a different
angle. And some say Orhan Pamuk is not very knowledgeable about the characters he writes about, because he's not one of them. But Yaşar Kemal is one of them. That's why he's more authentic.
I like this. This is, I think, a very nice vehicle to discuss the Turkish society, because that's my impression as well. If you visit places like Istanbul or Ankara, right, you'll see the most modern thing, a lot of tourism, very nice areas, pedestrian areas where you can walk, and everything that you would expect in a big modern city. And then you have, all the other parts of Turkey which are quite remote, little economic development, very conservative. So for me, what you describe here, it's also maybe a major divide in the society. Do you see it? Can you relate to my understanding?
Yeah, of course. Orhan Pamuk writes about this division a lot. On one hand, his characters. Some of his characters are modern, like Westerners. They live in Istanbul, in fancy neighborhoods in Istanbul, with good lives, good education, good backgrounds. On the other hand, we have characters who come from poorer families, from rural areas, and they are, like you said, more conservative. And I think these days, that's when I look at Turkey, I can see these two factions. Like on one hand, more Westerners, European, modernized Turkish people. On the other hand, conservative, traditional people who come from rural areas. And then the question is, how can they complement each other? How can they live side by side? For instance, in one of his novels called The Museum of Innocence, and it's a very popular novel of Orhan Pamuk. It was published in 2008, 2 years after Pamuk got Nobel Prize. This is an important book because Orhan Pamuk turned fiction into reality. He created a museum in Istanbul, and in this museum there are objects that you encounter in the book. There is a bed in the museum and lots of objects, and but these objects are in the fiction. So in a way, with this museum, he created something real from fiction, and that's interesting. And the plot is a love story. It's like Kemal and Füsun. Kemal, like I said, is from a wealthy family, well educated, living in a fancy neighborhood in Istanbul, and the girl he loves is Füsun. They are related distantly, but Füsun comes from a poorer family. She works at a shop. And they start to have an affair, a relationship. And Orhan Pamuk tells us about Turkey, about these divisions in Turkish society through these two characters, like the modern Westerner people and more conservative traditional people, and how they can date or get married or live together side by side, because we are one nation and we belong to the same nation, and we have to live side by side. And then the question is, how can we complement each other?
I was reading the book as well, so some of the messages are not necessarily positive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There is a lot of
Yeah,
tension, a lot
Yeah.
of mistrust
Yeah.
from each side.
yeah, yeah,
I think Pamuk was very inspired in, highlighting exactly the type of activities, the type of problems,
Yeah.
issues existing
Yeah. Yeah.
in the society, and this is a very good way to also to learn about the society and
Yeah.
to discover society.
Yeah.
Is this what you think it's happening right now, with all the political discussion, with
Yeah.
what we see in the mass media happening in the last weeks?
Yeah, definitely. This like Turkey is in between Europe and Asia. It's a Muslim majority country with a European perspective. Is Turkey Asian or European, or a bridge between the two? People would give you different answers, but I think most of the Turks would say we are a European country and our direction is Europe. But we have Muslim backgrounds, our ancestors, and we are a product of Ottoman Empire. And I like Orhan Pamuk in that also because even though some of his characters are from fancy neighborhoods in Istanbul, they are well educated, they come from educated families, wealthy families, and they have a European perspective to life. They are Western, modernized people. But still, Pamuk tells us about their contradictions. Like, okay, they are European when you look at them, their lifestyle, their education,
Values.
but still the values come with them. Like when they get married to a woman, all these traditional stereotypes about women, about
Who's living
society.
family, yeah.
Yep, and Pamuk, like Pamuk's characters have these traits too. And I guess that's what makes him a good writer to me.
Yeah, one very, very, very interesting social process I was not aware while reading these books is related to the internal migration. And I think he vividly described how all these conservative people from conservative societies are coming to Istanbul, not only, and I know that was happen in many cities. Ankara is another good example in this example. And I guess you also saw it, right?
Yeah.
Did it change the social fabric of those cities?
Yeah.
I know most likely Istanbul is the biggest city in Europe, not only in Turkey, right? In most likely on the European continent. It's you see that it's different city in many ways. Not only by the side because it's the biggest, but also what's happening there, the lifestyle. So how do you say that?
Like in the past, like before the 1980s, Turkey was more an agricultural country, and people from rural areas moved to the south of Turkey. Adana is very symbolic, and Yaşar Kemal's family also moved to Adana from Van, and people went there, worked there in agriculture. But after the 1980s, Turkey started to become more industrialized, and internal migration started to be towards Istanbul and the cities like Kocaeli around Istanbul. The population of Istanbul is between like 15-20 million.
Which
people,
is the size of Romania,
Yeah.
Just to say.
Yeah, and people come from rural areas to Istanbul, and they create these suburbs in the outskirts of the city. And obviously they bring their traditions, their culture with them. And people who have been living in Istanbul for generations sometimes look at them and say, wow, they turned Istanbul into a big village.
Yeah.
So village is like you go there and you bring your village to the city.
Yeah.
And suddenly you start to be visible everywhere in every corner of the city. And these people like who are from Istanbul for generations, and that's something new for them. And when you talk to them, you can feel this nostalgia. They say, well, in the past, like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when I was a kid, we used to swim here like swim in this beach, but now it's impossible. It's so dirty. And this neighborhood didn't have all these buildings, all these like constructions, and it was so peaceful. And we miss the old Istanbul, and we spent our childhood here, and they feel this nostalgia, but now the majority obviously is from the rural area, and in some cities, like let's say the population of that city in Anatolia is like 6,000 people, but people living in Istanbul from that city, the number of them is more
It's
than
higher.
their original city.
Yeah. We also have the same, Romania has a huge diaspora, big groups of people living in all kind of countries, and so we see the similar thing that.
And obviously, like if you go to Istanbul and you go to like popular places, like touristic places, fancy places, you will see a different country, a different Istanbul. But if you go to the outskirts of the city, you will see a different country. So two different types of people
in the same geographical
city.
space.
In the same city. Have
you seen this kind of mix in maybe in other countries? You also lived in Canada, and that's also, you have the English part and the French part. And have you experienced
I went to the French part, but I was in Toronto, and Toronto, I might say, is more like Istanbul, because when I was there, they told me 60% of people who live in Toronto are from other countries. They were not born in Toronto. So the moment you set foot there, you see people from all regions of the world, and the majority is immigrants, and they do not treat you as an immigrant because you are just like them, coming from another country. And maybe it's the only city in the West I haven't felt that I'm different here. Like you go there and you belong there because everybody is like you.
And they also have very nice policies, towards multiculturalism and making people feeling welcome there. For how long have you been there?
I was there for like 2 semesters, for 1 year. But I had friends there, and before I visited them like more times, like staying there for two months in summer, sometimes like 20 days.
Is there a big Turkish community as well?
Before I was there, there were some Turkish restaurants, and I met some Turkish people, but their number was very few, like very small. I was there in 2016 and 17. After that time, Turkish people, especially educated Turkish people, and that's the first time in Turkish history, this migration to the West. In the past, like in the 70s, 80s, millions of Turks moved to Germany,
but from
rural areas, they were mostly uneducated. But for the first time after like 2020, maybe educated people started to move to Canada, America, and Turkey. And now if you go to like Canada, America, or any cities in Europe, you meet lots of well-educated Turkish people, doctors, engineers, teachers. And when I talk to like Germans or Canadians, they used to tell me, well, we didn't know Turkish people were like that, because they knew Turkish people from rural areas, uneducated, who went there for work. But now this trend is changing. Now you go to like Berlin and you see Turkish people, young, well-educated Turkish
very
people.
Liberal, right?
Liberal, and they can speak like a couple of languages very well. They speak English well, they speak German well, and they can, like their lifestyle is totally different from the early immigrants, Turkish immigrants. And maybe this will lead to a change towards Turkey from the West.
And the image it has, right?
Maybe that will change the image.
The same in Romania. The image is rather in the economic sector. There are a lot of entrepreneurs and businessmen, and there used to be a lot of suitcase trade from between Turkey
Yeah.
and Romania. So this is the type of image, but we were seeing as well more people, students being interested in Romania coming here, and highly educated people. Do you think the same flow still continues? You mentioned it from the 2000. Is this something which is happening?
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's not good for us, for our country, when you lose your educated population. The country spends like millions of dollars to educate doctors, engineers, and when they move to another country, and they take all their
knowledge,
all their information, and that takes something from us. That's very bad for us, and I don't like the fact that among educated Turkish people, when I talk to them, I ask them, what are you planning to do in the future? Many of them say, well, we want to move to Europe, to abroad. I was a teacher, and in my class, I always asked that question: how many of you want to move abroad when you graduate? Like 10 years ago, only 1 or 2 students raised their hands because they wanted to stay in Turkey. They were happy in Turkey. And Turkey is a great country with a great climate, great people, very hospitable. But now when I ask the same question to students in a class, more than half of them raise their hands. Yeah, and that's the trend that changed in the last 10 years, unfortunately.
That's a very interesting and powerful example. We also do this in I think in our classes, and we actually see the decreasing number of people willing to migrate, and I think it speaks a lot about wider processes which are happening in the society. How is it to be a teacher nowadays? Again, we are going a bit back to our previous discussion. I very often have this impression that many people think, whatever I'm interested in, I can educate myself. I will find tutorials on YouTube or whatever. I can, even pay someone very little money to teach me something specific if I need. How is it to be, a professor? And I guess in general, but also in literature studies, which is, I guess it's happening in Romania, but I guess it's also happening in Turkey with fewer students being interested, in the topic.
Yeah, I can first talk about myself and then students. I love literature. I like reading books. It's like a passion for me. So I don't feel like I'm working. I love my work. I love teaching literature. I like being in the classroom. And I feel like sometimes I question why the government pays me. It's like a hobby for me. So this is how you feel when you like the thing you do. Like before I went to university, I used to read a lot. European literature and Russian literature, the popular Western authors, and a passion for literature grew in me. It's like, I don't know, maybe some people are born like that, because I hear some people, like you said, they are studying like engineering or medicine. They would say like, why should we read literature? Because reading literature doesn't bring any money to our life, and that's something bad, I think, for this generation. I do not blame them, because the economical situation is very bad in many countries. Obviously, people would want their kids to study engineering or medicine to find a job. Yeah, it's more like guaranteed than reading literature. I can say, like, if students have an interest in literature, if they are concerned about people, about life, about disenfranchised people, about ignored people that you cannot see on the street, even though you just pass by them during the day. Some are into these people, this aspect of life.
More the empathic, the empathy.
Yeah, more empathy, rather than working in like these big business centers, business places, and reading literature and teaching literature is an old profession. I think it hasn't changed. Like AI has changed lots of aspects, professions in life. But to what extent did it change literature? I mean, still people read Tolstoy, still people read Dostoevsky, still people read Orhan Pamuk. They come to Turkey and they see Istanbul, but these enlightened people still they have the need to read Orhan Pamuk, to like feel the history of Turkey, to feel the character of people, the character of a nation, and we get this in literature. Can AI or computers give us this real, authentic character of a nation? I think no. This is where literature comes into our life.
And plays an important role. Even though AI was deeply involved and learning from many of these books, right? And they were reading, but I totally agree with you.
And there's another question also, like should engineering or medicine students take humanities at universities?
They should.
Yeah, obviously for us they should, but yeah.
Otherwise they will, and this is a wink, they will develop algorithms like the one they already developed, which put tribes apart and create gaps between them rather than
like humans are not robots. We are a society, but within this society a person is a person. A person is just a person. They have their own problems, they have their own stress, they have their own good days and bad days. We cannot look at people in mathematical ways, like that many people live here, that many people do this. That's the job of AI, obviously.
True. I will start teaching a class on neighbors of Romania in the next next semester. Turkey is going to be one of them.
Great.
I very often use novels or good writers like Pamuk, to explore the country and to understand a bit through fiction the social fabric of a society. So what other novels should I follow or give us examples to the students? Like, and also if good movies or interesting museums can be to visit just to make a better understanding of
in films we have Nuri Bilge Ceylan. His films are very good and very popular. They're a bit slow, but if you have this film called more artistic, and you see like real Anatolia, it's like slow, and the characters in his films and the life, like the architecture, the houses, it's so real. It's like you are there, and the way people speak there, the way they talk in the films, it's so authentic. Nuri Bilge Ceylan I would recommend, and his films. In literature, like I said, Europeans mostly know Orhan Pamuk and Yaşar, Elif Shafak. They are very popular in the West, but I would recommend Yaşar Kemal. Yaşar Kemal is from Anatolia, and he writes Anatolia. He writes about Anatolia. He writes about people there, about life there, and he's one of them. And his books are authentic. They are real. I think like you can learn more about Turkey, about people living in Anatolia in rural areas from Yaşar Kemal. From Orhan Pamuk you can also learn about them, but like I said, Orhan Pamuk is not an organic intellectual. He doesn't come from that section of society. He's from Istanbul. He lived in a fancy neighborhood in Istanbul. So I would say Yaşar Kemal.
So it's rather a projection from the society or from the community he was living. The kind of perception, the kind of
Yeah. There is also Ferit Edgü, but I'm not sure if his novels are translated into English or other languages. But Yaşar Kemal's novels have been translated. Yeah, to like know more about Turkey, I would recommend Yaşar Kemal. Yeah.
Super. So we were talking, about films and books which can help us understand the Turkish society. So what would you say will be a good vehicle to enter into the Kurdish issue? So what kind of books, what kind of movies can we also see to gain a better understanding of the Kurdish situation?
I'm not as familiar to Kurdish cultural products as Turkish ones, but I can say Mehmet Uzun. I just remember Mehmet Uzun is a very popular Kurdish author, and I read some of his books, and he also writes about Kurdish people and the villagers, the peasants, the common people there. His books are good. And he lived, I guess, in Sweden for many years, and then he came back to Turkey, and he died in Diyarbakır, I think, in the southeast of Turkey. I think it was his hometown. I just remember him.
But
for films, I can say a film, I watched it. It's not from Turkey, but from Iraq, I guess. It's a very popular one. It's called Turtles Can Also Fly. Yeah, Turtles Can Also Fly.
And they cover also the area, the Kurdish on both sides.
Yeah, in Iraq, it's about American invasion of Iraq when they toppled Saddam Hussein, and it looks at the Kurdish people like two children, two brother and sister, and their parents are killed, obviously, and their life, how they survive at that time. Yep.
Because I had this impression that the topic is not reached or sought in many of the books I read about about Turkey. So this is why I'm asking you.
Yaşar Kemal is from Van, from my hometown originally. His parents are from there. But then his parents moved to Adana, Çukurova, the south of Turkey. It's a city there, agriculture, to work in agriculture. And he was born there. And he also writes about like Anatolian people, poor people, peasants, Kurdish, Turkish, all kinds of people. And he writes about Çukurova. At that time, Çukurova was like a cultural hub. People moved there to work in agriculture, just like Yaşar Kemal's family. And he writes about Çukurova, and in an interview, a journalist asked him, why do you write about Çukurova all the time? And he said, well, I'm a Marxist, and I believe that a person is shaped by conditions. A person cannot exist without conditions, without the surrounding. So he said, it's not just me who is writing about Çukurova. He said Tolstoy is writing about Çukurova, Stendhal is writing about Çukurova, Cervantes is writing about Çukurova. Every great writer is writing about Çukurova, because a person cannot exist without conditions.
And they write about the context and conditions of the life in their communities, in their societies.
Yeah. That's why, like when we compare Orhan Pamuk and Yaşar Kemal, Yaşar Kemal seems more real, authentic than Orhan Pamuk, the characters in his novels.
Okay, very interesting, and it's a wonderful point of discussion. Yeah. As the current developments in Turkish society, all this semi-chaos, or at least this is how we feel it from abroad. I know times like this can be very informative to create novels, to create histories, to create narratives. Is this happening? Can you see this following or being reflected also in the world of the new writers of the?
yeah, obviously we have tensions in Turkey now, unfortunately, and I think it's still new. Like I think like you experience it, like people move to other countries. There is a huge Turkish diaspora there, and like I said, educated people go there because of economic problems, and they feel they are not free enough, and they say they cannot see a good future for their kids. They want their kids to get good education in a Western country, but we know in literature it's not easy to immigrate to another country. There are different phases of immigration. You might not find what you have expected there. You might or you might not, and they will experience everything about immigration. Some are my friends, some are my relatives, and I think we will see their experiences in literature in the future. Their children will be born there. Their parents are from another country and they move to another country. Life is not easy these days. We know in Europe there is an increasing tendency against immigration, against immigrants. Yeah, I don't know. Like we are living in a turmoil, and I'm sure we will see the effects of this mass immigration in literature in the future, in the near future.
Yeah. Just to end the conversation, I have a note here that you mentioned one of my favorite writers, and Rashid. So I'm very curious of this satanic versets. How are they perceived? How do you see them? I discussed this in private with. I also have a lot of friends in the area. Some of them see it in a very positive, and also from a literature perspective. There, some of them are very critical. Others, how do you feel it?
I read Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. Like personally, I didn't like that book that much. Not like Midnight's Children. But it's a sensitive issue for Muslims, obviously. I mean, like, I feel like writers should be free. They can write about anything. And that's like postmodern literature, obviously. We are living in a postmodern age. And you can write about any issues and you can parody. But there is a line between parody and insult. Some people might feel insulted by what you have written, what you have created. I'm not sure, like, can you parody everything? Can sacred be parodied? If yes, to what extent? What if people who believe in this sacred are offended, are insulted? And what's the line? Where can we draw this line? So,
that's not an easy question, right?
It's not easy. So to be honest, I do not have an answer, like a definite answer to this question. Yeah, to like some extent, I totally agree that a writer should be free in writing whatever. But I'm not sure about people who are offended, who are insulted, because they feel their sacred is like insulted. Yeah, I'm not sure about the answer.
And that's a very good wider question, you know. All this debate we are seeing about free speech and what's free speech, it's also related to this, right? Complements a lot of the discussion we're seeing with social media and also with what's happening in Turkey and Romania and other countries in terms of political activism and so on. So that's I think a very good end to our discussion. Thank you so much for
thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Super. Thanks. We had today in this episode Cahit from Marmara University. It was a wonderful discussion. I hope you will like it at least as much as I like it. We managed to discuss about the Turkish society and how it's reflected in the literature today, but also in previous work of literature. This episode will be available on various platforms. You will find in the description of it several materials associated with it, so you can dig a bit more into the topic if you are interested. As always, thank you for listening to this episode, and also for being interested in topics related to migration and mobility.